Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkyu, and today is episode number 27, Exploring the Universal Mystery of Divine Timing. Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. We are talking about divine timing, which is one of the great universal mysteries. I don't believe divine timing is a problem that we need to solve or a thing that we need to define, but rather an occurrence that we do need to ponder over and over again. Um, Doing this with any of the universal mysteries allows the mystery to take you deeper into yourself and into your experience here as a soul living on earth. So, first, I'll go over some basics about divine timing, what it means, some arguments about what it means, some examples, and some perspectives that I have based on my work and my experience with it. So, some people believe divine timing is the belief that events unfold in the perfect moment. These would be events orchestrated by the universe, by fate, or some higher power. Other people believe that you can create your own divine timing, or that timing only occurs when you're ready for it. It is my opinion that it is both of these things. And as I personally navigate the twin flame path with one of my coaches, I'm coming to find that there are two very distinct lines of thought around divine timing. The first is that it's God's will, and the second is that people are in control of their own reality and they orchestrate divine timing. And as I just shared, for me, I believe that it's both. So we're going to talk about that. I believe this topic is important because so many of us struggle on the spiritual path with this push and pull of surrendering to the universe. We struggle with waiting, generally not having control, and trusting the process. This is part of the human condition for sure. And working along the concept of divine timing and working with it as a universal mystery or medicine will help make our human experience more deep and fulfilling. So there's a couple main perspectives on divine timing that I want to share first. The first topic, or the first perspective, is the spiritual perspective. And so this is kind of weaving in the ideas of synchronicities, soul contracts, having complete trust and faith in the universe, kind of believing that the universe has a plan and that everything happens according to a divine blueprint that's already in place. That means that outcomes are predetermined. I have seen evidence of this personally when I have gone to see an astrologer. So, like I saw, and not every astrologer, but one of the astrologers that I worked with is a gentleman up in Seattle. He works remotely. I'm happy to give his information. If you are interested, just send me an email. His name's Steve. He did an astrology reading on me. It was multiple hours long, and he basically told me my entire childhood in a nutshell. I was so blown away by it. But then on the other hand of that, like regular astrology readings, the annual ones, the weekly ones, the ones that involve like planets or things going into retrograde, I don't resonate with at all. In fact, I usually go through whatever experience it is like a year beforehand or a year after. So it's interesting how astrology can show us both like evidence of universe plan or predetermined outcomes and then not that. The spiritual perspective also includes the idea of synchronicity as confirmation. And synchronicity is like, those magical moments where it feels like the universe is speaking to you, seeing numbers, signs, messages. This was never a big thing for me until I met who I would consider to be like a soulmate person, twin flame person, and then the synchronicities exploded. They exploded everywhere, from seeing certain numbers to hearing certain songs on the radio to encounters with individuals who like looked like the person. I mean, it was constant, and it felt to me like angels singing. It was definitely a different vibration than what I normally live my life at. And it never happened until that point. For me, I feel like synchronicity is a lot of confirmation, but I still feel conflicted on whether or not we're living in a synchronicity forever. Like that, those experiences, the angels singing experience is not something that continued on. It comes and goes, and I haven't figured out if that means like you're on the right path, we're just going to give you markers, or if I'm moving into self doubt or getting off the path, and that's why the synchronicities stop. It's a really interesting topic. I haven't fully understood yet, but I don't think I'm supposed to. I'm also so curious to hear other people's perspective on this because I don't have a lot of people to have conversations with about it. Do you find that if you're living in a flow state or you are where you need to be, that it's synchronicity all the time? Does the synchronicity ever make you feel crazy or overloaded? Does it wax and wane depending on like where you are at in your process? It's hard to understand like what quote unquote the goal is versus like what's a natural part of the process. So that's one piece of the spiritual perspective. Another interesting follow-up thought about that is this like gaslighty energy that comes along with questioning the divine timing. And what I mean by that is if we're not experiencing synchronicity all the time, do we automatically assume we're off the path or something's wrong with us or we're not listening or that the angels are no longer speaking to us? And then we go into that like, oh, I have to heal it. I have to fix it. It kind of has that like crazy making gaslight energy to it. So that's an interesting facet to this conversation. Like if divine timing hasn't occurred, are you assuming that you're not good enough in your journey to align with the things that you want? And is that accurate? So this brings up questions like, did we agree to specific timelines or specific circumstances before incarnating, or did we not? Can those things change, like soul contracts? People believe that you can change soul contracts. I have never had an experience of being able to change anything. And I find that the spirits laugh at me when I try. So does it depend on the person and why they're here? I don't know. Another question to ask is, if everything is predetermined, is free will just an illusion? I feel like it is, but it isn't. I do believe that free will is an illusion to an extent, because on a human level, I believe we are the God of our experience, but on a bigger level, although we're still connected to God, that version of us knows way more than the human version. And we need to get out of the way and let that version kind of lead us through life, surrendering and having faith in the universal plan and that it's like knowing that it's in our best interest. So I don't know. It's like, I don't even know how to attack this topic in a linear way because there's so many different dimensions and facets to each part of the conversation. So hopefully you can track me. I'm going to talk about some perspectives that I don't necessarily agree with, but there are other perspectives. So I want to bring them into the conversation. So the psychological perspective of divine timing is more around pattern recognition. Like we notice divine timing when something is aligning for us or something that we want, but we ignore it when it doesn't. That there is like cognitive biases at play, meaning we have selective attention, confirmation bias, or hindsight bias, and then also the piece of placebo effect. Believing in it actually makes things work out in our favor, like where your attention goes is what grows, sort of thing. So if we want to see something, if we're hoping for something, if we believe that something is coming, like we will see evidence of it, even if it's not. And then, yeah, so definitely more of like oh, it's all in your head, which is also a little gaslighty, I think. I think this is kind of a bullshit perspective for that reason, but it also aligns with the idea that we do create our reality. So it is kind of tied to the spiritual perspective. Now, the third perspective here is the scientific perspective. And that would be, the idea that time isn't fixed, but more fluid. And the way that we perceive our reality shapes what manifests. So, for example, if I want something and I ask for it, it starts moving towards me. And so I start seeing evidence. Now, is this quantum physics or is it spirituality? I think it's a combination of both personally. But then we can also bring in the topic again of flow state and the neuroscience behind it, that when people surrender, they access higher levels of creativity and alignment. And that is basically letting God take over. Now, with these perspectives, there's also a dark side of divine timing that I want to explore a little bit. I'm also having this interesting experience as I'm recording this podcast. This is the second time I've recorded, and I feel so multidimensional and floaty, like I'm pulling nuggets from different places, but also trying to stay on track. Hopefully, it comes out cohesive and easy to understand. So, kind of the darker side of divine timing is when trusting divine timing, quote unquote, becomes procrastination. So, what I have seen with certain friends, clients, people that I know is like, oh, it must not be the right time. That's not really how it works all the time. Um, and also, it's easy to use that as an excuse. Like, are you waiting for a sign? Are you waiting for the perfect thing to align? Or are you afraid to take action? Because you have to take meaningful action in order for things to line up the majority of the case. Like, the perfect things, first of all, there's no such thing as perfection, but things don't come to us until we're open to receiving them. And that's part of the whole divine timing equation. I'll talk about more in a minute. So, an example of this would be like people staying in toxic relationships or dead end jobs because they believe it's not time yet because an opening has not revealed itself. That's not really how it works the majority of the time. So, it may be true, but at what point does your free will step in? At what point do you need to assert yourself and say, no, I actually need to leave this relationship, or no, I actually need to leave that job. A lot of times that decision, like that firm decision, is what opens the door for the divine timing to come through. So discernment is part of this process. And if we don't use it, divine timing, trusting in divine timing becomes procrastination. The second red, like dark side is spiritual bypassing. Like, if it's meant to be, it will happen. Um, yes, and you create your own fate. Like, you are in control to a certain extent. And there is like a lot of flipping and flopping between asserting your will and surrendering to the will of the universe or God. So, are you co creating with the universe or are you waiting for it to save you? That's the question that I would be asking. And then we can talk about victim mentality, how that plays into that. The third aspect of the dark side of divine timing is toxic positivity and manifestation traps. So, this idea, if it hasn't happened yet, you must not be ready. Again, with the gaslighting, there's so much gaslighting in spiritual communities and in spiritual thoughts that drives me freaking insane. This can be super damaging. This is a push and pull. It's not like, oh, it's not happening because you're not doing it right. Sometimes we're just supposed to sit and wait. Sometimes we're supposed to be patient. Sometimes we don't know how to be happy or allow joy. And our job is to sit back, not heal more. And also, reality check, some things happen for reasons beyond personal growth. Like, there is a greater story at play here. There's no need to, you know, bash or belittle yourself or one another about why they aren't getting the thing that they desire. So, the best part of this podcast is about how to work with divine timing instead of just waiting for it. So, first and foremost, recognize divine timing versus avoidance. Are you waiting or are you resisting? And the question that you can ask is, what action am I afraid of taking? Maybe you're not afraid of taking anything in action or anything like that. Maybe you can't see it. So make sure you do some shadow work around this to clear up any blocks. And if you don't know how, hire a coach. I have a huge list of recommended peoples on my sacredheartmedicine.us website. I also do coaching. Most coaches are pretty good to some extent, but this can really help you find your blind spots if you have any. Sometimes, again, you're just supposed to wait and be patient. And usually the spirits will be pretty clear with you on that. So, divine timing also doesn't mean sitting still. It means, to some extent, you have to align with what you desire. That means taking steps with that end goal in mind and being patient, learning how to trust and have faith in the universe. Also, really important in this process is tuning into the flow and your intuition. Now, I want to say that it's really important to tell the difference between now is not the right time or fear of change, but honestly, it's not. I talk to people who are like, yeah, it's not the right time for this, it doesn't feel right, but it's really because they're suppressing their emotions around the topic. Um, Generally, you want to be free and clear of your emotions. It should feel very neutral. It should feel very peaceful. Like, yeah, now's not the right time. I'm going to focus on other things. Whereas having a fear of it or resistance to it will often bring up a lot of charged energy. Again, this is if the issues are on the surface. If they're in the shadows, it's not going to go this way. That's why you need a shadow work coach. So resistance versus not being aligned with what you're asking for is one of the things you want to pay attention to. The second is the universe meets you at the level of your receptivity. So again, this is where shadow work comes in, where someone can help reflect for you where you're stuck or you're not getting what you want. I don't think many of us realize how much we block the things that we want because we literally don't like having a block to receiving. It's probably one of the most common maladies that I see in people spiritually. And it's so hard to see in yourself until you start to get like a crack in the block and you're like, wow, I'm really keeping out love or gratitude or some of those like more fun, playful emotions. And, the truth is that things don't happen until we're ready. And whether or not that's us or it's the universe in control, it doesn't matter. It won't happen until we're ready. So if you feel like there's something that you're blocking, explore the block. Um, if you feel like there's something that needs to be worked through first or a resistance, and even if we can't see how we block, we're still blocking. So, not all the time. Again, sometimes it's about waiting and patience, and sometimes it's about not being able to receive. So, some exercises that I recommend to strengthen your inner knowing in this process so you can see where you might be getting stuck. First of all, Insight Timer, the app, is one of the greatest inventions. I don't even have the paid version, I use the free version, but it's so incredible. And like, I'd say I do a meditation on stepping into receiving mode at least twice a week, as well as like basic energy clearing and other like visualizing and imagination stuff. Insight Timer is absolutely incredible. Fitting in daily meditation will change your life. And meditation can look so many different ways. Somatic healing is also a big one. I have two somatic healers that I work with in the Portland area, and I work with one of them even still remotely, Julie Greenwald in Portland, and then Ida Cave Woman for in-person work. Somatic healing has completely changed my life, and it can really help get you in touch with like emotions and blocked things in your body. And I'll tell you, you don't even know it's blocked until you hit it in one of these sessions. You're like, oh, damn, I was storing this emotion at this part of my body. Sometimes you can tell that you have a blocked emotion because there'll be like a numbness or disconnection, and sometimes you can't tell at all. Coaching is also super helpful to strengthen your inner awareness around this topic. And then yoga and other body-based experiences. So basically, somatic healing, but in a roundabout way, like yoga, like dancing, stuff like that. Finally, take aligned action. Action speeds up divine timing to an extent. Remember that. If you're asking for something to come into your life, you need to take steps toward it. The universe is not just going to give it to you. That's not what divine timing is. It's a relationship with the universe. I'm asking for this, I'm taking the steps, and I'm trusting that the universe is going to bring it to me when I'm ready, or it's going to bring me something better. And on that note, action is good, but forced manifestation is toxic. It's forcing your will and creating karmic return. I don't know, I've probably talked about karma multiple times, but it's not great. I don't believe fully in manifestation. I have a lot of like conflicting beliefs and experiences with it that make me believe that when we assert our will too hard, we're actually going to create karma to come back around and have to deal with the reason why we asserted our will so hard. So, the other thing I want to mention about divine timing is that in my work, I see a lot of what I call the universe Rubik's Cube. So, this is when I get visions that like show me, okay, there's 10 things that need to happen before this one thing. Let's say a client comes to me and they're having like pain in this part of their body. The universe or spirit will show me, oh, no, we can't deal with that pain yet. They have to get through steps 1 through 10, and then their pain is going to resolve. And sometimes it's that clear, like a prescription that I give them to go home with. And sometimes it's no, we can't even talk about that until this gets cleared first. And then I give that information to the client. So if you bypass this instruction and you save those other 9 steps for later and you force the healing of the pain, those 9 steps that you skipped gets passed on in your next life to your child. Either way, it needs to be resolved. So why would you pass it on? I don't really know. As I'm doing more work with like angelic energy and the higher vibration energy, my belief systems around this are starting to be questioned a little bit, and I'm interested to see how they change as a result of that work. But so far, the Rubik's Cube is pretty much a common thing that I see in my work. It will happen as well, like when I'm looking at soulmates or twin flame dynamics, and when people will come together, the universe will show me like this thing needs to happen and then this thing needs to happen and then union will happen, or that's when these people will come together. But these other parts need to happen first. So there's a general guideline of events, but again, that person still needs to decide to do those things. So like if they need, for example, I saw this in like a soulmate connection, the man needed to answer a spiritual calling, and then he needed to do some work in a specific area, and then he was going to come back together with his soulmate, but he still has to decide to do those things. And that's the taking aligned action thing, that the divine plan is there, but we do have free will to some extent. So in conclusion, divine timing is not about waiting. It's about trusting while also taking action. And sometimes that means not doing anything because you need to receive. Divine timing is also a universal mystery that we revisit and learn from over and over again. And maybe today is just the beginning for you. I'm curious to know what your experience is with divine timing. Do you feel like I got some things wrong? Do you feel like I got some things right? Do you have something to add? Send me an email, tag me on Instagram, communicate with me, and share your own stuff. One of the things that I regret the most about doing a solo podcast is that I don't have people to talk to about it. It's just me talking at you. So please take a moment and talk back. Also, would be great if you took a moment and reviewed this podcast and helped by sharing it with someone who may like it, or even just the review would be great. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.